Do base raids really affect where you should build from now on in Grounded? Maybe, but maybe not as much as everyone thinks. I did a video a little while ago showcasing where I think you shouldn't build anymore. Certain places that I just don't think are worth getting too defensive about because the raids aren't as big as they were during the public test branch. They've nerfed them, they give us more buffs, and I think that will be the way that they carry on going forward. But you've got to take them into account a little bit, as well as the plans with the rest of the yard. So here is, in no particular order, some top tips or things that I like about each location that I think is important in Grounded. So we've all done it. You've popped out of that cave and you're like, yeah, I'm going to build a base on this baseball. Is it still worth it now we've had all the base raid mechanics added and so much more of the yard to explore? And the short answer is, don't live here for long. Yes, use it as one of your first starting off points, but don't spend too long here. Don't make this your main hub. Likewise, I've always liked the footprints, and this is a good spot to build if you want to get a bit more flat land. You can even make a temporary little basement using the footprints. They're fairly close to one of the science outposts, and you're right in the middle of the map, so it's a good spot to get to everywhere. But because it's on the ground now, you will get attacked more regularly, more likely than other places, especially by the red ants as you're in the grasslands. So use it as your starting point for the first 5 or 10 days, but then think about once you get more resources, head elsewhere. So one of my favourite spots that I always used to love was near the oak tree because it was close to Burgle, and you always had to go to Burgle to get your quests, turn in your science points, as well as get your milk motor rewards. And relatively, this was kind of the middle of the map where you could go from anywhere in any direction and you'd be able to go and get most of the resources without having to spend too much time on travel. It can be a good spot still, and despite the fact that lots of the bugs can now jump pretty high and may even be able to get on side some of these posts, I still think it's worth a decent spot, or at least having some sort of outpost here. But because you don't need to see Burgle regularly anymore, it has definitely gone down in the rankings. So if you're going to build here, please don't build on this side though. Instead, you want to build with the post closest to one of the lasers and towards the top end of the pond. This has got the benefits of having obviously the science pod, so you can still go ahead and turn in your quests, and it's not as far removed. It's still a very central location. Consider how much time we're going to have to spend going up to the upper yard, as well as all the other stuff like the termite mounds and maybe possibly the undershed. This is almost the middle of the map now. Once you've built some walkways, it's always been a great place, and many players have enjoyed putting their little huts on side all of these logs and posts. And you might be worried that yes, the spiders will be jumping up here, but in my experience so far, I haven't seen too many actually do so. So you may have to be a bit smart about your entrance ways and make sure that you're still building on the tallest post, but you should be okay. The negatives, and again why it's not ranked highly anymore as much as it used to be, is the mosquitoes. They will come and attack your base more often. That's why something like on the rock over here might even be a better bet. It's still pretty close by. You've got an abundance of bombardier beetles underneath, which you need quite a lot of to make some of your tools and other items. And I like this area for like a production zone where I'm going to be crafting and making good use out of all the resources. And again, because it's so central, it means you're not too far away from everything. And technically this is part of the grasslands, so you shouldn't be pissing off, as the game says, the mosquitoes. Instead you'll be pissing off red ants mostly. And it has to be said, now they've toyed around with the raids, they're not as frequent as they were during the PTB, so I don't think you have to really take that into account as much as maybe before. The exception to that is anywhere that mosquitoes kind of are living, as well as bees, as it does look like aerial threats are still some of the most dangerous things. But here on this rock, you're pretty safe. None of the ants can get to you or smaller creatures, and you only maybe get a few of the larger ones be able to jump up, unless you've built a massive ramp up here. So the hedge has always been a great place for builders to come and show their creativity with tree houses, of course. But there is a big drawback to the hedge now. It's so far in the corner and you have to get across the yard to go and get so many more resources. It really shouldn't be somewhere that you have your base all the time. Remember, it's just one man's opinion, but the time that you spend in the hedge, either completing the laboratory or doing certain things like getting berry leather, is only a fraction of the time that you compare to spending the rest of the yard. There is an argument that you will be spending more time here getting more berry leather because of the way that you need to upgrade your armor nowadays. But for me, that doesn't make it a good base spot. I want somewhere that is going to be relatively easy to get across to other places and pick up resources that I'm going to need for the whole game, not just one section of it. So maybe a outpost, a factory place where you can come, get the berries, put them on drying racks quickly so you get the most out of them into berry leather, but otherwise that is about it. Building anywhere on top of the water fountain can be good for height because you'll avoid all the ground enemies, and actually anywhere on the stone slabs to the right hand side can be good. But do remember, we're going to see some significant changes added to this area, and again it's still too far over one side of the map. You have got next, I would say, probably not as bad a place to build, believe it or not. It's the island, Rash Island. I've always hated this place. Who wants to build in the middle of a swampy, watery place? But if you can clear this entire island, or a big chunk of it, it actually offers a lot of natural protection against creatures, but it's also not as close or tied up in the actual berry bushes. You're basically a bit closer to the oak tree, you're a bit closer to the pond, and I think it's a better location than the hedge. Again, it does look like though you will suffer maybe from mosquito raids a little bit more though. I know a lot of people love to build on top of the picnic table with good reason. There's plenty of food up there. You can get lots of nice little quartzites from the salt that accumulates eventually, as well as other bits and bobs. But it is a bit of a pain in the ass to get to, especially dragging up resources to go and help build big castles and stuff up there. I actually think a better spot is just below it. And with the bees being more aggressive now, apparently they attack you as soon as you get up there sometimes, even close to the honey, and they used to not do that, it definitely becomes a more dangerous spot. So I would actually build just below it, somewhere on this rock area. You've got a few little creatures that may come past, not necessarily lots of spiders, maybe a bombardier beetle or two, and the orb weavers are far in that corner if you do need to go and get some maybe web and stuff. You're pretty close if you can find a way to build a reliably little staircase up to the sandbox, and it's filled with mushrooms close by too. So if you want to build somewhere close to the picnic table, I think this is a good shout. Rather than the far side, which can be a bit too close to more bees, this is a decent spot. And it's not going to be so close that you're going to have trouble running into infected. I would never build on any of these slabs anymore. I always like the idea of doing so, maybe putting walls up everywhere, but because it's so close to mosquitoes, I just don't want to be dealing with them because they're just a pain in the butt. And of course you do have the wolf spider that comes through here. So maybe for the hardcore player who's got maybe lots of mushroom resources, but I wouldn't build anywhere on this middle run of slabs anymore. And likewise, this little green area here is just not really close to enough stuff that you really need, unless you're going to spend a lot of time in the haze getting gum and maybe some of the fungal growth stuff. But there's plenty of other spots you'll get that once you've plugged the gap anyway. One area I do like, even though it is a little bit too far in the corner, it is close to the rubbish, so you'll never run out of food or fertilizer for growing your crops, is this section here. You've got this almost perfect circle protected by this water hose all the way around it. I've always thought that maybe they'd end up having like a mini boss fight in here or variant, but it looks like it's just somewhere they feel was pretty cool. And look at it, it's just a perfect defense point. So the deck area. I always wanted to build stuff up here. I thought it was pretty cool. It was nice and flat. You could build some really impressive castles or cities or something up here. But because it takes so long to get the resources up here, it just becomes not as great an idea. And it's still under progress. That means that it could change drastically by the time 1.0 arrives. There are a few corners like this one that don't actually have actual changes coming by the looks of things, so if you still want to build something, that could be just the right spot to get close to the berry edges and then using the deck to get way across to the other side of the yard without any trouble or run into any kind of bugs or problems. And again, as long as you turn the haze off, you can stick to the outside edge or just move in a little bit and avoid it together. Running in a straight line with no worries about insects or terrain means that you can make journeys a lot quicker to get some parts of the yard, and you can even go ahead and just use the flagstones to get right up to the upper yard. So that's why I think it's not a bad shout, but make sure you pay attention to them yellow lines. Of course, the haze is not somewhere you want to build. There's not enough decent resources, you'll have to go miles to go and get grass, and there's too many dangerous creatures with the infected here. Once you've cleared them out and got a big bunch of the fungal growth and maybe the milk molars, there's not that much reason to stick around in this zone. So for that reason, it's probably one of the worst places to build. So what about the pond itself? Well, yes, you could build on lily pads, and that again is a natural protection against most bugs. But remember, the mosquitoes will be aggravated a little bit more. There is a decent spot here on the far side. It is a little bit too far from certain things and it will get annoying having to either swim unless you're going to build yourself a bridge. But in the future, I do think they're going to add a little shortcut to the upper pond. And so I formally declare, I take back what I said about the pagoda. I mean, I did say it was a good spot to build. I just didn't see the point in walling every single part of this little area up because I did think the base rates wouldn't be that bad. But underneath the pagoda, there is a secret tunnel that goes to a laboratory. And I think that'll end up connecting to the upper pond. You're ever so slightly closer to getting to the upper yards no matter what. You're closer to the sandbox than you are if you're near the hedge, and you are fairly close to the oak tree if you need to do anything here. But yeah, I would say it's going to offer some sort of shortcut up to here, and if they do add something on this side, I think it could be a good spot to have. It should go without saying, don't build in the upper yards. Lots of changes are probably going to take place, so don't risk it. Even though it looks pretty finished at the moment, I am imagining a lot of changes happening, so please don't build anywhere in this new zone. As for the rest of the ponds, I still think it's just way too aggro having too many different types of creatures, like the mosquitoes as well as stink bugs, and I just don't like the rest of this area. Of course, you have got some resources here, including weed stems, which you'll definitely need. But I think you're better off building on one of the lily pads rather than building on this particular side of the pond here in this location. Okay, my favourite spot of course is the middle flower bed on the way up from the barbecue to the shed. It's where I built my mushroom keep in my 50 days of grounded. Go and watch that video right now. There's a whole bunch of reasons why I think this is one of the best base locations. One, you pretty much avoid most of the creatures because these slabs are still too high for a lot of them, like the red ants. You're right next to some roly-poly spawns, so you can always get some more for your endgame armors. And again, you're pretty in the middle of the map again. You're super close to the pond. You can run over to the haze, the picnic table, and of course the termite and shed super easily. The only kind of downside, I guess, is the hedge. It is a pretty big run over to the far side. But by looks of things, we may get hedges lining the brick walls on the outer side of the upper yard, and I'm hoping they'll have berries in them in the future too, and that might make life a little bit easier. There are some negatives. You do get wolf spiders occasionally coming from the barbecue over here, so you'll have to deal with them. And sometimes the raids, even if they're red ants, they will kind of congregate just below you on the dirt. So you will have to take care of them from time to time. But I'm pretty sure this doesn't constitute being the pond, so you won't necessarily get a load of the mosquitoes coming in to attack you. It's definitely something I would advise building somewhere close like this so that you can get to some of them other places where you're going to be spending more of your time than you will in the shed or anywhere else in the grasslands as you progress further in the game. We know the upper yards are getting added. We know there's even more to be added, the under lab area in the future too, and you will be spending your time getting lint as well as termite pieces and of course even more of the pooper. So that's honestly why I think anywhere around that kind of area is a good spot, but particularly that edge so you can just jump down and go and get some stuff from the pond. I would not build anywhere around this area. It's way too dangerous with ladybug larvae and other creatures, and there's just not enough decent resources with all the dead grass. Likewise, it's suicide building on top of the termite wood pile or close to this deck, as you're going to be attacked by the black ants because they will attack you, even the non-soldiers will. So pretty much avoid all of this zone as a base location. So there we go, that's what I think about base locations in Grounded. Let me know what you think. Let me know the best places that you find to build and what places I should avoid. And I'll show you maybe some base builds in the future from some of you guys. I'm hoping to do some community streams soon. I'd love to come see your worlds. So until next time, rat bags, I'll catch you later.